Michelle Angela Yarnell, Angie to those who loved her most, was a 28-year-old from Ivy Bend, Missouri. She was a big Cyndi Lauper fan and loved animals. On October 25, 2003, her husband came home from work to find her missing. He later told Angie's family that she ran off with another man. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. All of us know the cliche story of the guy who goes fishing, allegedly catches a bass or a trout or a shark that's this big. I have my arms really wide apart even though you can't see them. He talks about how he fought the thing for an hour and it pulled him all around the lake, that he fell into the water twice trying to reel it in. But when people on the dock ask where the fish is, the fisherman says, "Oh, well, it got away," or "I gave it to a boat full of nuns that just happened to ride by," or "Men in black suits came up in a speedboat and told me I couldn't keep the record-breaking fish because it was a government experiment." I know, I'm exaggerating. But we've all known that person who tells an outlandish story that is also conveniently unprovable, but who, much to our amusement, also expects us to believe it. Well, today, you're going to hear such a story. But the tale isn't one my guest created. The recounting you will hear is the explanation Michael Yarnell gave to investigators once he confessed to being involved in the disappearance of Angie, his wife. Yet, unlike us who chuckle and roll our eyes when we hear a fish story and don't believe a word of it, the authorities bought Michael's unsubstantiated and self-serving story, hook, line, and sinker. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's site, charlieproject.org. Angie Yarnell was kind of a bohemian, get-back-to-nature type of girl. At one point, she had one side of her head shaved and her hair colored so she could look like Cyndi Lauper. As an adult, she lived in a home with a wood stove for heat. And on that land, she raised chickens and rabbits. In contrast to her love for animals, she also wanted to become a taxidermist. Yes, an animal stuffer. She met her husband, Michael, when he moved in next door in the late 1990s, breaking up with her current boyfriend in the process. Michael and Angie were married about 3 years before she disappeared. Although the marriage started off well, not long before the disappearance, Michael told her he was going to leave her. So on October 25th, 2003, we have only Michael's word regarding that date, he came home from work to find Angie gone. He alerted no one at the time, but when he showed up at Angie's mother's on November 1st, Michael claimed Angie ran off with another man. Approximately 10 days later, Angie's mother received a postcard from Angie claiming she and a man named Gary were headed to Texas and that she would contact her mother when they got there. Angie was never seen or heard from again. This case is the first in Unfound's existence where we are covering a disappearance in which a person has already been convicted for the crime. Yet, questions remain. They include, number 1, why did the DA accept the story of what happened to Angie, despite there being no proof? Number 2, if Angie's death was somewhat of an accident, why did the perpetrator do as much as he could to make it seem like she was still alive? And number 3, and most importantly, where is Angie Yarnell? Angie's family does not believe she disappeared in the manner that is now on the official record in Missouri. The guest for this episode is Angie's mother, Marianne Asher Chapman. Unfound News. The first Patreon live show occurred this past Sunday evening. There were some technical issues, all my fault of course, but I ended up having a great discussion with about 10 viewers. Yes, that's a very small number. But that was what we envisioned when Cherie Biggs, the business manager, came up with the idea. We wanted a more personal, one-on-one experience, and a lot of good thoughts and new ideas came out of it. If you'd like to watch the Patreon show, All you have to do is contribute $12 a month at patreon.com. Next, just yesterday I had a conversation with a company that is in the preliminary stages of putting together a digital series about web sleuths, investigators, and true crime podcasters. No idea where it's going, but it will surely include many hosts and programs you know. I need to thank Vincent at the Gone Cold podcast for putting in a good word about myself and Unfound, making the conversation possible. Finally, I will be moving within the next couple months. Probably not far, just north of here most likely. I'll be getting a 2-bedroom place so my dad can come visit once in a while now that he lives alone. I don't believe moving will get in the way of producing the episode for that particular week, but I will keep you posted. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Contribute to Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. This week I need to thank Carrie, Stephen, and Susan. You can also contribute at PayPal, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. That is also the email address. The website, unfoundpodcast.com. Merchandise, the books at amazon.com in both ebook and print form. Do not forget the reviews. Shirts at myshopify.com/unfound-podcast. The cards at makeplayingcards.com. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Angie Yarnell, Marianne Asher Chapman. Marianne, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Let's start here. Tell the listeners a little bit about your daughter, Angie. Now, we should explain, of course, that I guess on her birth certificate, her first name is Michelle, her middle name is Angela. How did she end up going by Angie instead of her first name? How did that happen? Do you remember?
I do. I just remember that just since she was born, I liked the name Angie, and so we just called her that, and she's always been called that, except in second grade when she decided she would be Michelle for about a half a year, and then she decided, okay, go ahead and call me Angie again, and so we just always called her Angie.
Okay, so it was her family. You called her that. Other family members called her that, and then her friends called her Angie as well.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Does she have any brothers and sisters?
And she has a brother, older brother. He's 5 years older than her.
Okay.
But that's all.
Okay, and how did they get along?
They got along really well, actually. But he's a boy and she's a girl, and they're 5 years different in age. They weren't always interested in the same things, or like ever interested in the same things.
Okay.
But they got along well, and Eric has always been pretty protective of Angie.
Okay. How would you explain Angie? What were her interests? Was she into sports, or was she into music, or what was she into? Maybe growing up, becoming a teenager. How do you remember that?
Oh well, as a really little girl, she always loved music, and when she was a really little girl, she had a little record player, and she loved Puff the Magic Dragon song, and she played it till it drove us all insane over hundreds of times. But then when she got a little older, as a teenager, she liked Cyndi Lauper the most.
Yeah.
And so much that one summer I went ahead and shaved one side of her head and dyed the other part of her hair pink.
Right.
She wanted a Cyndi Lauper, so we made her a Cyndi Lauper hairdo because I thought it's just hair and she wants it. So, yeah.
And it'll grow back, right, eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was pretty proud of that.
I have to tell you, Marianne, there aren't too many parents who would have done that. So you must have been a unique parent.
My son wanted a red, white, and blue mohawk, and I gave him that too.
Wow. Okay, I'm sure there's some
Okay.
listeners out there saying right now, why didn't I have her as my mother, Marianne? Because a lot of kids probably would have enjoyed to do that back in the day. That's funny. Okay, that's interesting. So she had the Cyndi Lauper hair. She was into music. And what about school? And what was she into in school? What was some topics? And did she end up going to college? What did she do?
Well, in school, she was just a little pupil, I guess, in grade school. She was a brownie and a Girl Scout, and
Mm-hmm.
she grew up in all of her schooling pretty much was in the Denver schools, and then she, when she got older, and she moved to Missouri. We moved to Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we uh, finished high school in Missouri, and then she started to get into taxidermy. But
Wow.
she was studying that when she went missing, actually. But that was what she was
Taxidermy.
doing.
So, just so people, maybe some people don't know what that's like, the stuffing of animals.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so funny
Wow.
because I never have ever seen an animal love anyone love animals as much as Angie, and especially dogs. She was the biggest dog lover in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I thought that was an odd choice, but she wanted to do that, but and she was into it, but she didn't get too far, and then she went missing.
Mm-hmm. Maybe what were some other jobs maybe she had? Maybe, of course, she was about 28 when she disappeared, but
Mhm.
what was she into maybe in her jobs in her 20s when she was getting her education to do that? Was she working?
Mostly she was waiting tables. Pretty much
Okay.
that was about it. Yeah, she did a lot of waitress work.
Okay. Okay, and I'm sure a lot of listeners have already read about the generalities of her disappearance, but when did she meet? We're just going to go over the generalities of the relationship right now, but when did she meet Michael Yarnell?
She met him about 3 years before she went missing, and she met him in California, Missouri, and she brought him to the house
Mm-hmm.
for us to meet, and um, we liked him okay. He never spoke to anybody. He was very extremely introverted,
Hmm.
and but she seemed to be happy with him, and so they got married pretty soon after that. And
So they got married
so
in about 2000, the year 2000?
let me think. I would think it would be about uh, I don't even remember what year it was, but
Okay.
yeah, I would say it was maybe 99 or 2000.
99, 2000. So they were married about 3 years. Did did they meet at a job or at a bar? Do you
No,
even remember?
he was she was with another guy,
Hmm.
and this this Mike guy, he moved in next door to where she was living, and she and he got together, and she left the other guy, and
Wow.
Mike and her went off together.
How did you feel
She
about
was
that?
just
How
like
did?
wild about him.
Okay.
I was stunned,
Hmm.
really, and my family, some of them, was really disappointed in her. But the other guy was 15 years older than her,
Oh wow.
and so I thought, well, that probably wasn't going to last too many years anyway. So, well, I just supported Angie pretty much anything she wanted to do.
Sure. Okay, so Mike moved in next door. They met somehow, and she threw this other guy out. Maybe it was an amicable breakup. We don't, that's none of our business probably as far as we're covering this. But she ended up with Michael, and she brought him home. And you said that he was kind of quiet, but really didn't have any problems with him. You personally.
I didn't.
Okay.
But he was really really quiet, and I would say, what's going on with him? Oh, he's just shy, but he's a real sweetie. That's what she
Mm-hmm.
said at first, anyway. Yeah, at
Okay.
first,
Okay.
he changed.
Yeah, well, so that sometimes happens. That's true, and
Uh-huh.
of course we're going to talk about that. Was he working at the time? Did he have any? Did he have any children, maybe from a previous relationship, Michael? I know that Angie didn't, but did Michael have any kids from a
No,
previous
nothing.
relation? Nothing. Okay.
Nothing I know of. No.
Okay. And was
I
he
think he was
working?
working.
Where was he
I believe he
working?
was.
Okay.
Wow. I don't remember,
I
but
remember. Okay.
I'm pretty sure he was working.
Okay. So, what were the dynamics of the marriage? Like you said, things changed after they got married. It maybe went downhill, but how often did you see Angie and Michael together? Were you close to them? I'm guessing you maybe got together for like Christmas and things like that. How would you explain the relationship?
Where they lived was about an hour and a half from here, and so we didn't get together in person as often as we should have. But
Mm-hmm.
um, it was really shortly after the marriage that for a while she came home and stayed with us because she said he was emotionally abusive.
Mm.
And then after a while, he came around and they talked and everything. And so she said, well, she was going back because everything was going to be okay. But I have to tell you, when they got married, um, I didn't know they didn't announce they were getting married. They just showed up and said, we just got married. And
Oh my, I
I
didn't know
didn't
that.
even know. Yeah, yeah. And so here she is standing in the living room saying, and just beaming, we just got married. And they'd went to the courthouse and got married. I'm kind of, you know, this really still disturbs me a lot to this day. But
Did she ever
I
explain
guess
why she did that? I mean, in a private moment, just mother and daughter, did she ever explain why she did that instead of having maybe a more traditional ceremony?
I don't recall her actually ever saying it. I guess I
Hmm.
just probably let it go. But
Hmm.
I remember looking at her finger, and she didn't have a ring on, and I said, "Well, where's your ring?" And she said, "Well, we're not going to do rings." And I said, "Well, why?" And she said, "Well, we're doing something else." And she had long blonde hair. And she lifted up her hair, and on the back of her neck, she had gotten a tattoo, and
Wow.
it was like it was 2 inch, like cryptic lettering, and it said "Obey." It said "Obey." I said,
Obey.
"What?"
Obey.
Yes. I said, "What in the world is that about?" She said, "Oh, Mom, just, like, obey your intuition and to thine own self be true, blah, blah, blah," and all that. And I probably just rolled my eyes. And I mean, I'm not against the tattoo, but
Hmm.
I didn't get that. And I didn't like that cryptic look about it either. But she said, I don't know. It was strange. It was just really strange.
I've, as the listeners know, I've never been married or anything like that. But even to me, that seems a little out of the ordinary.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. And it would be later on that I kind of figured out what that all meant, what it actually really meant. But it took
Okay, and
me
we'll
a
talk
while.
about that.
It took me some
What did
research
did
to figure.
uh did Michael get a tattoo of any kind on the back of his neck saying anything?
Oh no, just only she did.
Okay, so they didn't have neither of them have rings, but she was required, I guess, to get this tattoo.
It acted as if um, she wanted it, you know.
Okay.
But I know that she did her best to keep it hidden for years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if it was under her hair in the back of her neck, maybe that was a good place for it not to be
Yeah,
seen by anybody. But once again, your interpretation of it was that she wanted to get the tattoo. It wasn't like he forced her to do that.
that is what she
What she
portrayed
wanted.
at the time.
Okay.
I look back on a lot of things and see how it was probably different than I realized. I was pretty naive, I suppose.
Right. Right. Okay. Um. So they get married without you being there, and I do have to ask you this. Um. It was Angie's father involved in her life. We've never talked about him. I don't want to get into that too much if he's out of the picture, but um, I don't know
He
if
is
we've ever.
out of the picture, and he lives in Colorado, and I
Okay.
hadn't talked to him in many years, and
Mm-hmm.
we have a very bad relationship. But I do recall when Angie went missing, I instantly, just instantly, frantically panicked, and
Mm-hmm.
I sent him an email and told him that Angie is missing, and he sent back something hateful, and I've never heard from him since.
Okay. So he did. So he did not play any role. He was living in Colorado. Of course, this is all in Missouri. You are essentially Angie's parent. Father not having much of a role at all. So, but you and she are close.
We were, yes, we were
Very
very
close.
close,
Okay.
but it wasn't that he didn't have a role in her life. He had a huge role in her life, but it was never good. And he would
Mm-hmm.
come and visit her on occasion, and she was always, always upset about him coming, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't good.
Okay. All right. That's that. We'll just leave it at that. Okay. So she gets married. Kind of, I guess you'd say, elopes, even though she didn't go anywhere. But she got married. It seems on the spur of the moment, without telling any family members. It doesn't seem that he told any of his family members. Um, how much did you learn or know about Michael during that time that he and Angie were together? Did he ever talk about prior relationships or being in the military or anything like that? I mean, I know, once again, I know you say that he was very, very quiet. Um, would
He honestly never talked about anything. He never hardly ever spoke. And I even remember when he said a couple whole sentences to me, and I was astounded because I've
Mm-hmm.
never seen anybody. He wasn't rude. He wasn't. He. I understand, according to him, coming from Angie, he had been abused as a child, and I don't know if that was the problem or what. But he was extremely introverted, and he just didn't speak much. And but it was very creepy, to be honest. It really was, because
I
it's not even
probably.
natural.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I mean, you like people that can listen, but when they simply don't talk, that's something else. Okay, so you didn't know about much about him during that time, but of course, he's going to play a large role in our conversation a little later. Like you said, that their relationship seemed to start going downhill after a while. To your knowledge, or did Angie ever say anything to you about maybe thinking about getting divorced, anything like that?
Uh, Not until the end. Toward the end,
Mm-hmm.
she was saying that he wanted
He
he
wanted
wanted out.
divorce. Okay. Why
That's
was
what
that?
she said.
Any idea?
I don't. They started fighting about things, and
Mm-hmm.
and I never knew the whole truth on it. She said that um, he was having um, bad moods because he was trying to quit smoking cigarettes, and um,
Mm-hmm.
that he wanted to break up with her. But I don't. He wasn't telling me everything.
Okay, that's what she was saying, but you get the idea there was a little more to it?
I know that was a little more to it.
Okay.
You know,
Okay,
there was a
because
lot more to it. In fact.
from I'm sure from the listener's standpoint and my standpoint, if he's not much of a talker and everything else, it seems weird that he would be the one that wants the divorce. It would seem to me more likely that Angie would be the one, being that he doesn't seem to have much of a personality, etc. You know what I
I
mean?
know.
So that's very interesting. And how did Angie feel about him wanting to leave her? Was she okay with that, or was she going to try to keep the marriage
Oh.
going? What do you think?
It, she didn't act like she really wanted the marriage to keep going exactly, but she called. Um, I don't know, about 3 weeks before she went missing, and said that
Mm-hmm.
Mike said he's leaving me, and anyway, she had to go find a job in town,
Mm-hmm.
and um, so, but she didn't say I want to come home or anything like that. I don't know.
Okay. So because she thought she was going to be a single woman here in the near future, she was, I guess, wasn't working at the time. You said that maybe she was going to school for being a taxidermist. So she had to go out and try to start making some money if she thought that she was going to be single in the near future. Did she ever say anything about Michael possibly having a woman on the side?
She didn't tell me that. I did find that out myself in my
Okay.
investigations. But
Afterwards.
she was
Afterwards.
really, yes, afterwards.
Okay.
But she was worried about that they live in this place called Ivy Bend, Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a long, windy road, and they don't even to this day have hardly any cell phone service down there and all that. And it was at least 20 miles to the closest small town, 25 to a little bit bigger town. But in the place they were living, they had a wood furnace, and she was afraid you could not let the fire go out in the winter because it was so hard to get it going again and everything. And she was just really worried how she was going to juggle all that. Plus, she had her two dogs to
Mm-hmm.
take care of and all that. She was very worried about what was going to happen there.
She was living in a place where the main heat was a wood furnace.
Yes.
So
They
you had
moved
to bring in
after
like
they
wood from
moved.
outside and bring it in and
Well, actually, the furnace is on the outside of the structure in a
oh my.
little, kind of a little housing around it. But you fed it, you had to go outside and feed it actually.
Oh
And
my
it was
gosh.
somehow there was vents that would heat the inside. I'm not sure how that works exactly.
Oh my.
But this whole property, when they went down there and they were doing their best to live. She wanted to live off the land. She did a big garden, and she had chickens and rabbits, and she had a worm farm, and she had all this stuff, and she did all this canning of her food that she made, and um, but the whole place down there, it was actually pretty hideous,
Hmm.
and he always worked on it, trying to make it more livable, and it was like they were doing what they could to, for lack of better words, just living off the land. And it
Okay.
was kind of like a old fashioned, maybe a hippie life or
Okay.
something. And that's what they were doing down there.
Okay. It sounds tough, Marianne. I mean, I like my
Oh,
creature
it was.
comforts, I like my air conditioning and stuff. That sounds tough.
They bought the property down in that neighborhood, well, that community. You could you could go in there today, and you could put $100 down and $100 a month with no credit check, and you own a lot. But then you have to build something or bring in a trailer or something to set it there. And
Hmm.
they're all over the place down there. Most people go there, and they use that for their weekend fishing cabins and stuff like that. But some people live there year round, as Angie and Mike did.
Okay. And how often were you talking to Angie at this point? Those last maybe month or 6 weeks, 2 months before she disappeared. How often were you talking to her, and how often did you see her?
Every week, um, for a couple of years before she went missing,
Hmm.
we spoke on the phone probably twice a week, each time about an hour. And we used to laugh about how we always set it up, and I'd tell her, okay, Ange, you call at a certain time so that my husband Tommy, he's going to get stuck with the dishes again because I'm on the
Ah,
phone with you, right?
that's
And
funny.
we did that, but we were really close. Except that week, that one week, I thought she was out putting in applications and all, and I have the phone records from back then,
Mm-hmm.
and I did call her house every day, and there was 1 minute call, and it went to their answering machine. But she didn't answer. But I didn't really get alarmed because I knew that she was trying to find a job.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so let's get into that.
but
When was
yeah,
the last time? When was the last time you actually spoke to Angie before she disappeared?
it was the 20th of October.
20th.
No,
Well,
wait a minute. Let me back. Yeah, it was the 20th of October.
okay. So not quite a week before she disappeared, if we're going to accept October 25th, 2003 as the
Yes,
date.
I didn't know she had disappeared until November the 1st.
Okay, okay. And see, when did you? And we're going to get into this is a unique, as the listeners already know, this is kind of a unique case for Unfound because of the circumstances. But do you, thinking back once again that you didn't find out till November 1st, do you even remember October 5th, 25th, 2003? Do you remember what you did that day? When did it start bothering you that you hadn't heard from Angie in a while?
And actually, it didn't. It had been a week that I had tried to call her, but I actually didn't really worry too much about. I just thought she was busy and she had a long commute back and forth every day, and I kind of just really wasn't worried. And I think I was pretty busy or something that week as well, and it was unusual and odd not to be talking to her, but I just thought, oh well, it's just a little different right now, and I kept waiting for her to call and tell me where she was hired or something, but she never did.
So you never even, I mean, we haven't really talked about some friends that she might have, that Angie might have had friends from, growing up or whatever, but did she keep in contact with any other people who may have been trying to contact her through that week around October 25th?
Well, it's so funny because when right a little bit after they got married and before they moved down there, they had an apartment in Jefferson City. Well, it was Angie's apartment, and he moved in there. And but anyway, I later found out all but one of her girlfriends, they just quit being her friend because I talked to several after she went missing. And they would tell me, and they all had this pretty much the same story. They would come over to visit her, and they would walk through the living room, and he would be sitting on the couch looking at the TV or something. But he wouldn't even so much as even look up or acknowledge that they walked by.
Wow.
His eyes were just focused on the TV, and they said he was too creepy, and he bothered them, and so they quit coming around, all but one single girlfriend. And she said, I told them he's just quiet, but really he's a sweetie. But they said that he was scary, and she didn't. And she said, I don't see that.
Huh.
I don't
Well,
think she had too many people contacting her,
okay.
living down in there too much.
Okay. All right. That is a creepy story. So you said November 1st, which would of course be the day after Halloween, that is when you started to get a little worried about this, and what'd you do?
That is the day I found out she was missing.
Okay. Let's put it this way,
November.
when did you start worrying? I mean, maybe you found out that day, but when did the red flags start going up?
Well, when I think back on it, I was a little concerned off and on over a week's time, but it kind of nagged me. But it just didn't seem it hadn't been. I don't know. I wasn't that worried, but it was just unnatural not speaking with her like we always did. But I wasn't actually really worried. I just chalked it up. She's really busy right now. She's got a lot on her plate right now. And
okay,
that's the way that went.
And we should make clear that this is 2003. She didn't have like a cell phone, so when you were calling her, this was a house phone or something.
Yes.
Okay.
And they people had cell phones. I had a cell phone
Mm-hmm.
back then, but you can't even use even on my iPhone. I go down there now. You can't even get any
No
reception
service.
down in there anyway.
Okay. All right. So November 1st is the day that you say you found out that she disappeared. How did you find that out?
Well, that was the day. It was my son's daughter's birthday. Samantha was 5 years old that's her birthday, and we were having the birthday party. And all day long, we had a lot of guests over and kids and presents and everything, for a little 5-year-old girl's birthday party. And all day long, I kept waiting and waiting, and she didn't come. And she had told me a couple of weeks earlier what she had bought for the child and everything, right down to the gift bag. She described it all. And they didn't come, and I kept calling every hour. What's going on? Is your car broke down? What in the world? Why aren't you here? Because Angie would not have missed this, and it's like a holiday around here. The kids know Mom means that you have to be here, but I was really worried, and I kept looking out of the kitchen window, watching the drive, and I felt really almost sick to my stomach. Why isn't Angie here? And so finally, by 5 o'clock, all the guests had left. The party was over. My husband, my son, and the baby and me were here. Everybody else had left, and so about 5 o'clock, I called and I just said, "Look, Angie," I left a message again. I said, "If I don't hear from you tonight, I'm going to be there really early in the morning." And then about 2 hours later, I saw her car pull in the driveway, and I could see both of her dogs were in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And it was dark out, but I could tell that was Angie's car. It was a big old Cadillac. And so I threw open the front door, and Mike stepped in.
Huh.
And I said, "Finally," I said, "what happened to you guys?" And he stepped in and sat down in the rocking chair. And then I looked out past him, and I said, "Well, where's Angie?" And he just said, "Well, she's gone now." And I said, "Well, what do you mean she's gone?" He said, "I don't know. I think she ran away with another man." I said, "Well, what? Who?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, why would you say that?" He said, I just an assumption. I came home from work last week and she was gone." And I just lost it. I just lost it. I didn't even know how to process that because, Angie, I know she didn't tell me some certain things like that she thought that would disturb me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty sure she'd tell me if she was going to run away with somebody.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, why would you think that? Who is it?" He said, "I don't know. I just think that's probably what happened." I said, "Well, what did she take?" He said, "Well, she didn't take anything." And I said, "She didn't take any money or anything?" He said, "No." And I mean, her two dogs, Blossom and Penny, those were her kids. And I mean, big time. Those were her kids. I said, "She walked off and left Blossom and Penny?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "She didn't take anything." And then he said, "Oh, yeah, except," he said, "except that big collage that was up on the wall." And I said, "What collage?" I said, "What do you mean?" She took that. She had made this. She was very artistic. And she made this poster-sized collage. And it was in a frame, and it was behind glass, and it was really detailed, and it just put a lot of work into it, and it hung on the wall. I said, "Why would she take that big cumbersome thing and not take her dogs or her money or her purse even?"
Or a car the car that he drove there in that Cadillac. Yeah.
Right. And he said, "Well, I don't know, but that's all that's missing is that thing off the wall," which was just insane,
And so you're there, he's there, and like you said, he's not one to talk, but all of a sudden he's talking to you. He's probably said more words there than you had heard him say maybe, in a long time. And finally he's talking to you
fast.
about, and your husband's there, Your son is there, and he's telling they're hearing this as well.
Yes, and then he kept getting up and going outside and walking out to the car and coming back. And he wasn't himself at all. He was really, really nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And we all were kind of scared of him, because something was
Sure.
not right.
Sure. I'd feel the
But
same
then
way.
I asked him if he filed a missing persons report, and he said no, because she's not missing. She ran away with another man. Well, I'll tell you what, the next morning I was down there filing that report.
Okay. So he's there. How long would you say that Michael stayed at your home that evening before he jumped in Angie's Cadillac and went back to Ivy Bend?
I'd say he was here about 30 or 40 minutes.
And that's all he would tell you. He says, all I know is I came home one day and she was gone. That was
She
it.
was gone, and that big picture has gone off the wall, and that was it. I said, she's not going to leave her dogs.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, she did. I mean, honestly, she didn't even ever go out to get the mail without those dogs. She never came here without her dogs. They came anywhere she went.
At that point, did you suspect that maybe Michael did something to her? Once again, we know everything that happened since, but at that time, November 1st, what'd you think?
I did, but I did, but I couldn't say it out loud.
Sure.
I didn't know how to process it at all. I did not know how to process it. And I have to say, this is going to sound bizarre, but I'm going to tell you, this is just true. The very minute that those words came out of his mouth, while she's gone now, I'm not kidding. I heard, as clear as a bell, it was whispered right in my ear. I heard somebody said, neighbor man. They did. They said neighbor man. I don't know anything about that at all, but I did hear that. But I don't know about that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I knew something was wrong. But
I remember that.
let's face it. Angie did leave that other guy and go off with Mike. Did she not? She
did. That's true.
And mothers don't want to think that their daughters are going to do something like that, but she is a 28-year-old woman, and I couldn't control if she decided to do something like that. But way down deep, there's no way I believed any of this. I just didn't. But I feigned affection for him for quite a while, trying to find out things from him.
So the next day, November 2nd, you go down and file a police report. And did you ever, on top of that, drive down to Ivy Bend, down to their place to check it out? What happened after that particular day?
I did file the report the next day. I had to fight and argue with them like crazy, but they finally let me do it. And I was just cast into something. I just an absolute nightmare. It's a nightmare. But it would be about a week later that my husband and I did go down to Ivy Bend, and I had heard. Well, Mike had sent me a message. No, he called me, and actually, I called him. And he was laughing, and he said, I bought a better truck. And he laughed about it. And he said, because I can afford one now. And I don't know. I thought that was disturbing, but still, I didn't know what to think of it. So, so I told my husband, I said, okay, let's go visit old Mike. And see, I said, when we get there, you need to act really interested in that truck that he's so proud of. Get that hood up and everything, because I'm going in the house, and I just wanted to see if her clothes were hanging in there or what was going on. So Tommy kept him outside for a while, but the minute I stepped in the house, the second I stepped in there, it was a trailer, by the way. The second I stepped in there, My eyes went straight to that wall where the collage was.
Yeah.
The whole wall from like 3 feet wide and 4 feet long or something. It was a sheet of drywall that was just screwed in and just patched in there. And then the floor coming off from it, about 3 by 3 foot area, that had been replaced with some linoleum that did not match the rest of the floor. And so that whole wall and the floor coming out from it had been replaced. It wasn't painted or anything. It was just white drywall.
And do you have any idea how long it, I mean,
really
when was,
there.
let's just, and I know what people are thinking right at this second, but just to be clear, when was the last time you were in that place before that time?
I was there. The last time I was there was in July.
All right. So between July and the beginning sometime of November, somehow there's something that went on with that wall and something that went on with that floor.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Did Michael say anything? Did you ask him about that? Why is that wall like that? Why at that point when you were there, did you ask him why it was like that?
I didn't mention it. Didn't even mention it. I
Okay.
ran around in there real quick, looked, her clothes were gone.
Her clothes were gone. Just excuse me, her clothes were gone?
Yeah.
All of them? All of them?
Yeah. Her books were gone, her clothes were gone. A whole lot of her things were gone. Her journals, her diaries, I wanted them really bad. Everything was gone.
Okay, and Michael had no explanation for it. You had no explanation for that?
I didn't say anything about it, but he gave us a couple of plastic bins, green bins, that had some old ratty old paperback novels and literally just a bunch of trash as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Said, maybe you want this of your daughters. And I brought them home, seeing if I went through everything, seeing if there was any kind of clue of any sort in there, because I was already in big time investigation mode. But it was just useless. But all of her actual items were gone.
Wow.
She didn't take them. They were gone.
And once again, at that point, you didn't ask him about any of that. Maybe didn't want to. Maybe a little afraid of him. I mean, you are down at his house, and of course, you're already having your own suspicions. Did the police?
I think I was trying to outsmart him a little bit. I was just.
Sounds like
I was actually feigning affection for him. I just felt that we had treated him so good. We included him in our family. We did everything we could to make him feel welcome. He called me mom, things like that. I just felt he's going to divulge something to me if I just play this right. It was sort of like that, I think.
Okay. Did the police ever go down there and check that out? Did they ever talk to Michael? Anything like that in those like days and weeks after you filed that report?
I have a lot of copies of different things that I got from the police station.
Mm-hmm.
And they went down there after I filed the report. They went down there like the next day, and in the report it states they saw nothing out of the ordinary. They were there for 11 minutes and everything was fine to them. And they maintained, yes, she probably did run away with another man.
So do you even know? Do you even?
God,
please.
They dismissed Angie from the get-go. She never stood a chance. She never stood a chance with this police agency. Do not think I don't like and appreciate law enforcement, because I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a lot of trouble with this agency, really a lot of trouble. And it wasn't even the agency itself all the way. It was more the detective and the sheriff. And yeah. So yeah, they spent 11 minutes in there and said everything looked fine.
So they did at least go inside and they saw that wall just like you saw that wall, and they saw that floor just like you saw that floor.
It didn't seem to matter, I guess.
Didn't seem to matter. Okay.
when Michael had come up, the after that party was already over, did he even give you a date? Did he say she left on this date? Because we know the day that's out there is October 25th, and we'll get into that later. But at that point, did he say, yeah, she's been gone a week, she's been gone 3 days? Did he say anything like that?
He said she was gone when he came home from work on the 25th.
That's what he says. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so he comes up on November 1st, says she ran off allegedly with another guy. Then you file the police report. Then you and your husband go down there. You check out the interior. You see some suspicious things. You also notice that her clothes are gone. A lot of things that she would own, are gone. And then the police went down there. They spent a total of 11 minutes down there, and then they came to the conclusion that Michael was telling the truth. All right, so that doesn't sound very positive to me. But then something happens, and this is where we're going to go into get into the more of the details of these things. Tell the listeners about a postcard that you received. What date did you receive it, approximately, if you could, and what did it say? Where did it come from, etc.
Well, I received a postcard about 10 days. I don't know the date. I don't have it in front of me, but it was about 10 days after I found out she was missing. So it was probably about the 11th or 12th of November. I received a postcard. It was postmarked from Harrison, Arkansas. And it said, Mom, Barry and I are headed to Texas to visit his family. We'll write when we are settled. Love, Angie. And that's all. That's exactly what it said. And at first glance, it really looked like Angie's writing, and I was so relieved. I was so glad, because I wasn't all of a sudden I wasn't so afraid, because then I was mad. I was angry. How dare you? But and it really did look like her writing. But I sat with it for a week or so, and I sat up all night, every night. I turned it all in every direction, and I read it backward, and I tried to find, and then I figured out pretty quickly, even though it does look like her writing, sort of, it's not her normal writing, because normally she writes real frilly. She and I sent cards and letters in the snail mail, even back then, every week. And I know her writing, but she writes a little frilly and girly and all this, and this was very, very strained, as if it was really slowly written. And I thought, okay, somebody's forcing her to write this or something. But regardless, when I first got it, I took it to the sheriff's department, and they closed her case. And then after about a week or so of me going over it, I took it back, and with some arguing and fighting with them, they agreed to reopen her case. So they did. But
Harrison, Arkansas. Did that mean anything? How far is that away from Ivy Bend, Missouri? How far generally?
I'm not sure how many hours, but I would think it would be 3 or 4 hours at the very least. It's right past Branson and right into Arkansas. I drove down there, of course. Yeah, but I know at the time I didn't even know anybody in Arkansas.
Right.
And it meant nothing to me. And so then, next thing I know, I'm just constantly on the computer all night long. I'm looking for Gary's and just crazy.
Did you tell Michael about this postcard?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
I did. And, everybody started acting like they were feeling sorry for him, because he did run away with another man, according to this. And, after I knew she was missing, it would be 3 weeks later, and it was Thanksgiving. He came and sat at our table. And I always host a huge Thanksgiving with my family. I'm talking 30 people, easily come to my home for every holiday. This is where you go. And so everybody was feeling sorry for him, and I kept thinking, well, I hope that Angie and Gary shows up, but of course they didn't. And then a month later, it was Christmas. There was nothing from Angie, and no card, and it's just not Angie. And but Mike did come for Christmas too. And
yeah, let's talk about. Let's just put a bow on that postcard. So you get that postcard, and do you still have the postcard? Do the police have the postcard? Where is it?
The police had the postcard for a long time. But I ended up getting it back. I was told back then. I thought there were some stamp machines in post offices that you still licked the stamp back then. And I thought maybe we could see who licked this stamp. And the police said that they sent it away to be analyzed, but they never did. It was found in his desk drawer.
Okay, so they lied to you about that. Anybody, I know, most post offices even back then had video cameras that somebody went in there, could have mailed it. That was never checked, I guess, either?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I went to the post office. I talked to them, but they are busy post office. They didn't really know anything. They wouldn't
and
allow
is
me to
it
hang a flyer on.
Would it have been possible, let's just put it out there, that Michael drove down there and mailed it back? Could he have done that? Could he have done that? Okay.
Of course.
Okay. So you mentioned Christmas. Thanksgiving comes and goes. You don't hear from Angie or this Gary character. But it does get to Christmas. So now we're like 2 months since she disappeared. And Michael does show up for Christmas. What goes on?
Well, and of course, I bought Angie's gifts, and they were wrapped under the tree because I was certain she was coming. I really was. And, but anyway, so here comes Mike, and he has gifts for us. And he hands little Samantha this yellow flowered gift bag. And inside it is a Barbie doll with a Vespa scooter. This is what Angie was so excited what she was bringing for the child's birthday on November 1st.
Yeah.
She told me about it on the phone. She was all excited about it. She just can't wait to see Samantha's face. Anyway, so Mike handed this to Samantha and said, "Look what I bought for you." And I knew. Every time he did things like that, I knew. I didn't say anything still. But I knew I was building the case, and I just kept adding more to it like that.
So
that was loud, spoke loudly to me.
Right. So he pretended like he bought the presents, whereas these were the presents that Angie had bought maybe back in September or something for, or early October for this birthday that happened November 1st.
Yes.
Wow.
That was him.
Wow. All right. So you just kind of chalked that up into your memory. How was he at Christmas? Otherwise, obviously he was putting on a show with that. How was he to everybody else? Of course, you've portrayed him as being very, very quiet. Was he still that way?
He was still pretty quiet, but he was just kind of sitting around like he was sad.
Did you bring up Angie? Did you say, have you heard from her? Did you try to talk to him about her?
I always did, and he would always say, "Oh, no, I haven't heard anything."
Okay.
We didn't forget Angie. My brother, he always says a prayer for these things. My oldest brother, and I made sure that we included Angie in his prayer and all that. So,
of course. Of course. All right, so Christmas comes and goes. You don't hear from Angie, or once again, Gary, if he even exists. And do you have any perception at that time? Of course, you said that Angie had her dogs she had some animals and things. Was Michael taking care of those, or what happened with that during that time? Do you even know?
He had the dogs for a while, and then I think he gave the dogs to his stepfather, and I didn't know what it became of them. I later did find one of them years later, but they had a cat. He let the cat go, and I guess it just went feral. And I don't know what he did with those chickens and
Okay.
rabbits. I suspect he may have killed them. I don't know.
Oh, okay. So we don't have anything. Yeah. So not only if she ran off, not only did she leave her dogs, but she left this cat, these chickens, these rabbits, and everything else as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Christmas comes and goes. I guess New Year's comes and goes, but the next thing in all of this that happens that I understand as being the next noteworthy thing is Michael disappears. When did that happen? How long did you find out about? How did you find out about it?
Well, it was a little under 2 years after Angie had went missing.
Okay.
I had just been through so much. Oh my God, so much trying to find Angie. But finally, I reached out to a reporter here in Jefferson City, Reve Edwards, and she's with the News Tribune newspaper. And she came out and interviewed me and did a nice story about Angie being missing. And it was just like the very next week, I get a call from national syndicated TV program, the Montel Williams Show, which, by the way, was Angie's favorite show on TV. But anyway, they asked me to come and be a guest and speak about my missing daughter. She'd been missing not quite 2 years, but I mean that's like to families with missing loved ones. That is hitting that's hitting the lottery right there.
Yeah.
And so I went out there to New York and spent 3 days, and all I knew is I was going to hold Angie's picture up on national TV, and so it didn't result in anything exactly. It was a great experience and all that, but the thing of it is, when it was getting ready to air, we had a lot of publicity, local publicity about local mother, a missing daughter on national TV show, tune in, so-and-so crime and all that. And it was on the radio stations and the local TV stations all over the place. At that time, Mike had deserted their property and had moved in with his stepdad and stepmom. And I get they heard about it on the radio, and the stepmother told me that he got into his van, and with his clothes tumbling in the dryer, he said, "I'm leaving, bye," and he left. And all of a sudden, he disappeared. He just couldn't take the publicity of this. So he disappeared also.
When did you find out that he I'm guessing his stepmother told you this later. How long after he disappeared did she tell you that?
He had been gone. I can't even really remember, but he had been gone for a few weeks when I got wind of he's missing.
Okay.
So, yeah. But nobody really seemed concerned or anything, but
I have to ask, so you did have some sort of relationship with his family, his stepmother, and then, is that right?
Just a little bit. Actually, I'd never even met her until after Angie went missing.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to everybody I could find. I mean, I just tracked down and dogged every person, even remotely related to him and their friends and his family. I was just frantic. I had to find Angie, you know.
Of course. So she lets you know that Michael has gone off. You believe it's because of this publicity, all this publicity that Angie's disappearance is going to get. And so that's how you found out about it. So he just took off. But you were the one who filed the missing persons report. Can you explain that? Which sounds a little strange.
Yeah, when I found out he was missing, of course, I'd known all along there was something really wrong with him, but I needed to. I didn't have him in my pocket anymore. I didn't know where he was, and that was really rough. So I went down there and I said, I want to file a missing persons report for my son-in-law. And once again, I had to go through it, but in the end, they took the report. I knew that, they're going to in the end, but so now I'm making up flyers, not only of her and posting them, but of him also. And I made him up flyers, and I'm putting them out everywhere. And but nobody heard from him for a long time.
Is there a reason his stepmother or somebody didn't do it?
His stepmother, and it turned out his stepmother, who left the stepdad, she and I actually, after the fact, became friends. And she said that that Mike just couldn't take the heat, and she always thought that Mike did something to Angie.
She said that. Okay.
He said that.
Okay, so
his stepfather, he never said that.
He never, his stepfather though. Okay. What are you keep saying stepfather, stepmother? What about Michael's biological parents?
His mother died when he was younger.
Oh.
And his father, I never met his father. He died, though, during these years of all this
happening.
I never did meet him.
Okay. All right. Thank you for explaining that. Okay. So you filed a missing person report. So now you're not just looking for your daughter, you're looking for her husband, who you of course suspect that he did something to her. And nobody had seen him, just like Angie, kind of just dropped off the face of the earth. No idea. But he was eventually found. So this, once again, and this happened all 2 years, like you said, about 2 years after Angie disappeared. So let's say October 2005. How and when was Michael found? Of course, he was found alive. Where, and how?
Well, he was in Biloxi, Mississippi, and may I back up with something?
Please go ahead. Please.
Okay. First, I would like to add that while he was missing, during that time, before we knew where he was,
Sure.
I was able, my friend, and reporter friend, Reve, helped me, and we were able to find a lady, a forensic handwriting document expert lady, out in Texas, and her name is Peggy Walla. We sent the postcard to Peggy Walla to analyze it, and Peggy Walla, it came back that Angie did not write the card, but that Mike himself wrote the card.
Okay.
And so I took that to the sheriff's department, and once they saw that, it was finally at that time that, and it was years later, but it was at that time, for the first time ever, they decided to call him a suspect in the disappearance of his wife. So,
okay, that was good work.
That was good. That was good work. So, but then it wasn't terribly long after that the sheriff's department got a phone call from law enforcement in Mississippi that said that Air Force Base had a man applied for a job at a military base there, a civilian job, and they did a background check on him, and it came up that he was listed as a missing person where I had listed him.
Mm-hmm.
So that he had an NCIC number, and they saw that he was a missing person. And so the police knew that he had written the card at that time. So when they heard that, they decided to go get him.
Yeah,
bring him
I
up.
bet. All right, well, good. What was it? How long did it take to find him? If he disappeared roughly in October 2005, when did that all happen? 2006, 2007? When was that?
It was toward the end of 2008.
Wow. Over 3 years, he managed to kind of stay missing.
Yeah.
Okay, so and they found him somehow in Biloxi, Mississippi. Applied for a job, and his name popped up. So they went and got him. I mean, what was he doing? Was he surprised that they found him? I
He
mean,
was.
how did?
He was working some job there, but he was. They told me he was sleeping on somebody's couch in some camper, and that's pretty much like him. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not against the law to be a missing person, but it was a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that we had the postcard analyzed.
Yeah.
So that they had an interest in him at that point.
Yeah, I think otherwise, who knows if they would have looked for him at all. He might still be missing in 2019 for all we know.
I know.
Possibly. Okay, well that was good work. I'm glad they did that. So I'm sure that when the police showed up in Mississippi, that Mike was surprised, and I guess I'm guessing that he was not using a fake name or fake ID. He was just using his regular name then, and it just kind of slipped through the cracks or something.
You don't believe he was as clever as he thought he was.
Okay. So they bring him back to Missouri, and what happens?
Well, I would say within, it seems like it was about a week later that they kept questioning him, and he confessed, and he said he had killed her.
That he killed Angie.
He said he killed her.
Wow.
And he hid her body.
And what did he say happened if we're still to use this October 25th, 2003 date? What is the story of how she died that he told?
Well, he says that they got into an argument, and it spilled out onto the back deck, just a little tiny deck. It was about 4 feet off the ground. And he said he doesn't remember if he shoved her or if she just fell backward or what, but she fell off the deck. He said she hit her head on a rock and she was dead instantly. That's what he says. And so he said he got down there and he sat with her for a couple of hours. And then he said he rolled her up in a tarp and he put her in the car, and he's headed to Versailles, the sheriff's department, which is about 25 miles away. And he said he got halfway there, and he said something changed about his adrenaline. And so he turned around and he went back home, and he took her out of the car, and he put her in the pickup, and he put their canoe in the back of the truck. And he said he drove down to a nearby dock, and he put her in the canoe, and he said he rowed 4 miles upstream to an island in the dark, to an island that he knew of. And it was his idea that to lay her on this island. But when he reached the island, the canoe turned over, and she fell into the shore of the island, and he got out, and it was like mud. And he said that it went up to his knees, but he couldn't pull her out of the mud. So he just left her there, and he went back home. That's what he said happened.
That's his story. That is his story.
That is his story.
Okay. After he told this story, did he attempt to take the police out there to kind of show them where he believes Angie's body is?
Well, when he confessed, they initially charged him with 5 felonies, and 2 of them were some sort of murder in the 2nd degree, or this or that. One of them had something to do with crossing the state lines and some kind of forgery or some, but there were 5 felonies. They said to him, they said, look, if you would take us to her remains, we will offer you a plea bargain. So he said, okay. So he took him to the island, and of course she wasn't there because she had not been put there, but they found nothing at all. And they talked to the neighbor man that owns the island. You can see the island from his home. And he told them, he said that he and his 2 black lab dogs go over to his island every day and go fishing. He said there was nobody put on that island. He and his dogs would have known it. That's what he said. But the police went ahead and let him have the plea bargain anyway.
So allegedly, the condition was he gets the plea bargain if Angie's body was recovered. Her body is not recovered, but they still give him the deal.
They do. They did. And they said, and so they dropped the 4 of those felonies, and the only thing he was charged with was 1 count of involuntary manslaughter. And that carries a term of 7 years, in which he actually served 4, exactly 4. But they told me the reason that they offered him the plea bargain was because even though he said, he confessed that he killed Angie, they said, we don't have any physical tangible evidence. So the evidence is literally her body. And since there is no body and he was so successful in hiding her body, they had no evidence, so they let him have that.
I'm going to guess that this was done all without your knowledge behind the scenes. I mean, how did you feel when you found out that he didn't give up the location of her body, and he's still only going to get 7 years anyway?
I was really angry. But you know what? It was decided before we walked into that courtroom. It was. And there was nothing I could do. There wasn't a thing I could do. So at least I didn't know if there was anything I could do.
Okay. I'm going to guess you know the names of the people that were involved in making this deal. Who was the prosecutor? Who was the DA? Who are these people's names? Just so the public can know who they are.
The detective on the case was Ron Witt. That was the worst one.
Okay.
The sheriff of the department was Jim Petty. The DA was Marvin Opie. Those were the 3.
Okay.
And it was a change of venue, and it was changed to Laclede County, which is in Lebanon, Missouri.
Okay.
And the whole court thing took about an hour.
Why did they change the venue?
They do that a lot. I don't know why.
Okay. You never got an explanation for that?
No.
Okay.
I don't know that I asked.
Okay. This is why I've told many people leading up to this episode, this is a unique circumstance. This has never happened on Unfound before, where we have a disappearance where somebody's actually been caught, served their time, and as people can do their math, that Michael Yarnell is now out there walking around a free man and has been doing that for a while now. Looking back on it now, and I know I just can't imagine that. I can't even believe this happened. But would you have rathered them not do anything at that time instead of him serving the time?
I would have rather there had been a jury and there had been not enough evidence and he had walked. I would have rather that than the 4 years. I'm not kidding you.
Okay. Or even them not even even with a confession, not prosecute the case at that time and just wait. Maybe.
That would have been great, but they were dead set on making this go away. I'm not kidding. And from the time he was arrested to the time he was sent to prison was 6 months. That's it. 6 months. And it was gone. It was over. And in court that day, I pleaded with the judge. She was a nice lady, and I know that her hands were tied, but I pleaded with her, if you will give us a little more time to look for Angie's body, because I know if I find her body, and especially her skull, we will see that she died differently than what he said. Would you please give us some more time? And she denied that. She did ask him to stand up and just say something to the family. He stood up in court. He never even looked my direction. But he said, all I want her mom to know is that there was no blood. So that tells me there was a lot of blood.
Yeah, right. The exact opposite. Did he ever even admit to, so he admitted, I don't particularly believe the story, but did he ever talk about the postcard? Did he admit that he was the one who wrote the postcard?
Yes. And he said that I was told that he said he wrote the postcard to make me feel better and to make them not look at him for anything, plus to make her mother feel better.
When really it was probably just for them to not look at him. Okay.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. And we don't know if you did sell me something. Do you think that he got special treatment?
Well, I do. I mean, he served 4 years. In the last couple of years, it was a minimum security prison, known around here as the Country Club. And not to get too far off subject, but I regularly go to prisons and speak. I do it. I've done it for 10 years now, about violence in our society and missing people and my daughter's case and everything. And, I go to maximum security prisons. These guys do not appreciate that they are in there for 32 years for something less than this guy got 4 years for.
Right.
I went to the prison to visit him, actually, and I literally begged him to tell me where I can go collect my daughter's bones. And he would not tell me. And I said, never, ever contact me again. I mean, I begged this man to tell me where to find Angie, and we won't do it.
You had told me that you thought that he might have gotten special treatment because he might have been doing some things for police on the side, like back whenever.
Yes.
Is there any proof? Is there any proof to that, or is that just a rumor? Just to be honest, just to ask you.
Well, I found out from talking to a whole lot of people that he was a drug dealer. He and the neighbor man, they were partners, and they were drug dealers down there. But I was not surprised at that. But I got a call. I was in the grocery store one day, and I got a call from a man from Miller County, a little town called Eldon. And he told me, he said, I want you to know that Mike Yarnell, not only is he a drug dealer, he is a police informant. He said, I want you to remember that. I wrote this man, I never heard of this man before, and I wrote his name down. And I contacted the sheriff of that county, and I said, have you ever heard of this man? And I didn't tell him what it was. And he said, oh, yeah, he's a good guy, upstanding guy. And I thought, so, and they were friends. Yeah, pretty legitimate to me. It wouldn't surprise me at all, because everything I did, and I mean anything and everything I did to try to find Angie, I had to fight for. this detective just absolutely would not help me.
Do you know if when he was doing this confession and everything, was he ever given a lie detector test?
The detective in question here, in the beginning, he told me that Mike had passed a polygraph test. And when I went out to the Montel show, I called this detective. I said, okay, I had never been on a national TV program at the time. And is it okay if I say that he passed the polygraph test? And he said, well, actually, it really wasn't a polygraph test. It was a voice stress test, but he did pass it. I said, okay, so I said that. I found out from the detectives that he was replaced with after they went and got Mike, that not only he was given 2 voice stress tests and he failed both miserably, they said. He cried the whole time. He failed both of them.
So you could maybe read into that the story he tells about her falling off the deck is not the truth.
It is not the truth.
Okay.
It is not the truth.
Okay. Now, I know right about now, I know some of the listeners are probably remembering what we talked about regarding the trailer, that when you had gone down there maybe a week later, you had gone down there, you'd seen that the wall had been repaired somehow, that the floor had been repaired. And some of you listeners are probably thinking, well, why didn't they go back to that trailer and they could have, done something, maybe forensics, but that couldn't be done. Why?
The trailer, at one point, nobody had told me, but I found out after the fact that they had the land office that sells these lots down there. They wanted to resell the land that he had abandoned years before. But they wanted, a man bought the land, but he wanted that removed. And he put a real big, nice, much nicer, newer mobile home on the very same spot. But I wasn't told about that, but they dragged that trailer off and scrapped it at some scrapyard, and it was just gone.
So it's interesting. I guess I even told you this, that it's interesting to me that Michael would confess after the trailer had already been torn up and everything else. So the police couldn't even go back and check his story because the evidence is all gone now. It's all gone.
Yeah, right.
So it's pretty convenient. Very, very, very convenient.
Would have found evidence, and
Mm-hmm.
and she died right there. She did. And it was bad.
Okay.
Really, I know.
And once again, just to
your tissue.
Right.
It hit that collage. It destroyed it. It destroyed the wall, and it was replaced. I know this happened.
Yeah, that's the reason that collage, I guess we could just generically call it a picture of some type, is on the wall. In that area where that was hanging, it was repaired, and then the area right below it had been repaired as well.
You know,
please.
Just like when he sat down in the rocking chair and he said she took that. Oh yeah, she took that off the wall. He was telling on himself without knowing it. Just like when he stood up in the court and said, "I just want her mother to know there was no blood." He was telling that was the opposite of that. There was plenty of blood, a lot of blood. And, so this man was telling me things without knowing he was telling me.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to say you're right. But too bad this all didn't come up. Too bad the DA didn't take this more seriously. When the sentencing was done, so many things that we can look at now that does seem like something shady was going on in the prosecution of this case. Some things that don't seem right. Okay.
Totally agree.
So he's supposed to. First of all, he lies about it running off with his guy Gary. Then he, manufactures the postcard, and then he pretends that he bought those presents, and then he runs away himself because he doesn't want the attention. Well, we know he ran away because he thought he might get caught himself, and then he is found And then he comes up with this story, and the DA still lets him off, even though he doesn't, never does identify where the body is, and he gets this light sentence of a total of 4 years. It certainly seems all a little strange.
It does. And I keep saying he's not a very clever guy, but really, if you think about it, the way he led our criminal justice system down such a path, I guess he was a little clever.
Well, either that, or was there
stunned by that.
Well, there might have been some complicity too. Like you said, it seemed that it was like they just wanted it to go away.
They did. They absolutely did.
Okay. Now we do have
to
talk
about me to go.
Yeah, he wanted you to go away. I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. And we're going to talk about what Michael's doing now, but we need to talk about this next. Many of the listeners in the discussion group saw that I posted some pictures of a woman with dark hair, and I had asked the listeners, how old do you think this woman is, and when do you think this picture was taken? Of course, I did not say what her name is or anything else like that at that point. But when did you come across this woman in this picture book or whatever? Please tell the listeners the name of this woman and why this could be significant to your daughter's case or disappearance, etc. Please.
Well, in my investigations many years before, Michael's first cousin told Reve and myself that that years before Mike was in the Navy and he went AWOL and he escaped down into Old Mexico. And while he was down there, not only did he do a couple years in prison down there, he also met a woman by the name of Francesca. And his cousin said, and Francesca also ran away with another man. And then after all this, I had the opportunity to go in this little camper trailer, little teardrop kind of camper trailer of Mike's. I found the opportunity, by the way, and I found this picture album, and it had all these pictures of this pretty dark-haired lady, and you can tell they're in Tijuana, and he is very young. He couldn't have been more than 18 or 20, really, and she seemed a little bit older, I think, but anyway, that was Francesca, and I never could find out what her last name is, but I know that is the Francesca that supposedly ran away with another man and never came home.
That's what he said about Angie too. So that's why
exactly.
So that's why
once, why not again?
That's right. Right. So that's why I had posted the picture, and I think the consensus is that the woman that you have identified as Francesca in the picture, and I posted 3 different pictures. And you should know 80% of my audience are women, so I think they're more in tune with fashion and styles and things than men are. They believe that given the fashion and everything else, that picture was taken in the late 80s, and that Francesca was probably in her late 30s, even possibly her early 40s. I think that's what it all averaged out to be. She was definitely in her mid to late 30s. So if she was born, let's say she was 38 in the picture, let's say it was taken 88, should be born 1950, which means Francesca would be like 68 years old now, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. If the listener's right, and I default to my listeners and their experience with looking at those things better than mine, because I'm not good at that. So, and you, of course, you can go see what they all had to say. There's many, 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 many comments A lot of opinions
I have to
about.
go see that then.
Yeah, no, you
Okay.
will see them. I'm sorry now that we're talking. Of course, people are not going to hear this till Friday, but I want to make sure that you get into the Facebook group, the discussion group, and you can see all the comments. Many, many.
I will. I did
Yeah,
see some the other day, but
yeah.
I
Well,
imagine there's more since.
there's many, a lot of differing opinions, but
I
I think the
recall
consensus.
somebody said something about the acid wash genes
Right,
and
that's
all
right.
that, you know.
That's right. That's exactly right. So she would be a woman, possibly in her 60s somewhere. But the tough part is you believe that she is probably not an American citizen. You believe those pictures were taken in Mexico.
I do.
Okay.
And on the back of a lot of them, in his writing, it says things sort of like Francesca eating cake or something. Francesca doing this, Francesca doing that.
Okay.
So it has to be this Francesca that the cousin spoke of.
And this cousin did somehow this this cousin, I would never ask you to name this person, but you found this cousin, and this cousin said that he or she believes that Francesca ran off with another guy. That's what this person told you.
Yes. Yeah.
And what year was this that you talked to this cousin? Can you say?
I would say it would have been about 2006, maybe about 2006.
Okay.
My friend Reve, the reporter,
Mm-hmm.
she helped me with so many things, and this cousin happened to be her next door neighbor in California, Missouri, and
Wow.
and that's where we found this out.
Okay. Well, that would certainly be something if the woman, I mean, like you said, he's like 20, she's in her late 30s. Could still have a relationship. That happens. But if she disappeared as well, that would be a big deal. It'd be interesting if we could track her down. Now, listeners should know I just did a little bit of looking around, and believe it or not, there are two Francesca Yarnells in the United States, and one of them coincidentally at one point lived in Florissant, Missouri. Coincidentally.
Mm-hmm.
The problem
Mm-hmm.
is that according to the records that I found, she's only 38 years old in 2019. So that doesn't
Mm.
sound like her. But, mistakes are made sometimes in paperwork. So I'm sure that the
Mm-hmm.
listeners are going to look that up for themselves. So this cousin led you to believe that at some point Michael had been in the military and had gone AWOL, of course, away on leave without, being allowed to. Did you ever realize that he was in the military? If he was AWOL, did he ever serve any punishment? Did Angie ever say anything to you about this? His stepmother? Was this new information to you?
Angie told me that he was in a prison in Mexico, that it had something to do with a car title or something. And she seemed to really believe that. I seriously doubt something like that, but as far as I know, that's all she knew about it was. But I don't know if she knew he was in the military or not. I don't remember talking to her about it. Only the fact that he'd been in prison. So
Okay.
wanted to let me know he'd been in prison.
Huh. I have to tell you that Michael does not seem like the type of guy that was ever American in a Mexican prison. That does it
Yeah,
doesn't. That's a little hard to believe. Mexican prisons are a rough place. Rough.
yeah.
And I would think being an American in a Mexican prison would be even more, even tougher. So I don't know what to think about that. But listeners now have maybe a job on their hands. See if they can track down this Francesca. We don't know her last name, I guess.
I don't, and it's not written on the back of any of those. It's just her first name.
Okay.
And that's kind of a unique name, so.
Yeah, not in Mexico though. Maybe in the United States. But I have some industrious listeners. Maybe they'll be able to do something for you. I'm hoping, and see if she is still alive or not, or if she's still around. That'd be interesting to know. Okay.
I asked the police to look into it. I told them all about it, but they wouldn't do anything.
No.
And it's, with all the investigations I've done, it just seemed I didn't know how to do something from another country. I kind of just didn't know what to do with that. So
it's tough. Not because it's Mexico and because they speak a different language. They just don't keep records in some of these other countries like they do in the United States. It's just the way it is. Okay, but we'll just have to see if I do have listeners in Mexico, so I'm hopeful. Now you've been talking about your own investigation that you've been doing for over 15 years. Of course, it'll be 16 years this coming October. You told me about the digging and searching that you've done. Have this been something on your own, or have you had help? In that.
Well, I started going down to Ivy Bend, searching for Angie, and in the beginning, I had this person or that person. My husband went a few times. That we went together many times. So I just sneaked down there by myself and went. And I've just searched so many places down in there. I mean, I've went through caves. I've been to the bottom of sinkholes, crawled under old houses, burnout houses. There's no place I won't go. I don't know. I trespassed many times, and a lot of people down there don't particularly like you just walking up on their property.
Right.
But I'm just going. I just need to find Angie. I just need to find my daughter. So I've carried a shovel in my trunk for years, and in the earlier years, I was just, there was no logic to my thought process. I was anything. I would do anything. I traveled all over. I went all over the place looking for Angie in different states. It was just what I did. But even to this day, I still, in the warmer months, I still am down there looking. And there's just so many rumors. And so I checked them all out. The rumors are endless, in fact.
Yeah.
And so, if I hear that she's been put in a barrel and she's rolled into a cave, I'm crawling in there and looking for it. That's just what I do. But it's, one day I was at the bottom of the sinkhole, and it occurred to me, I could get hurt down here. I would be missing forever too. And so I thought, okay, I will always bring one other person when I go, and so now I do.
Okay.
But I still look. But the man that bought that property, he put it back up. He put it up for sale just a few months ago, and I tried to buy it with the GoFundMe thing, but we didn't reach enough money. But just last week, some other person did buy the property, so I haven't spoken to them yet. But I'm hoping they're going to be. They're going to welcome me to come.
Let's hope.
And continue to look. Yeah, I
Sure.
know.
Sure. You had told me a story about a refrigerator. What did that have to do with your searching?
Oh, just one of the times I was down there. There's a lot of, here and there are trash piles, and it's just the way it is. And anyway, I was down there once, and I noticed that in their yard, which it wasn't there when Angie was there, because I don't think Angie would have put up with it, but there I noticed it was this big pile of tires. And so I thought, well, I don't wonder why all these tires are piled up. So I started taking them off, and I got them all pulled off that pile. And underneath them, there was this blue plastic tarp. And so I pulled that back, and there, just flush in the ground, there was a refrigerator, freezer buried. And I mean, I was 100% certain I would find her there.
Yeah.
And I opened it, but there was nothing in it. But I know that a neighbor and his wife drove by there every day to go to work, and I have their account of it in writing, and they said every time they drove by, he was out there for days digging and digging and digging, and he had these bags of concrete, quickcrete mix, laying stacks of them laying there by him, and they always wondered about that. I found lots of areas of concrete just poured on the ground, just randomly, not even smoothed out, nothing, just almost like left over and just poured here and there, all over the place. There's lots of that. It's down there in her yard and beyond.
How big is that property?
I would say the lot is, I don't know by feet, but maybe a half of an acre.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
So you've been.
I don't know how big it is.
Okay.
So you've done a lot of searching, digging. I'm glad to hear that you got some help and aren't doing this alone. Like you said, being in the sinkhole. We don't need you to disappear too, Marianne, of course.
I know. I thought I could get bit by a snake or something.
Yeah. Right.
What is Michael Yarnell doing now in 2019?
I don't know. I have heard rumors. I've heard rumors that he lives in Montauk County, and that would be Clarksburg or California, Missouri, something like that. I know that most of his family lives in that vicinity, but I'm not certain where he is exactly. But that's what I've heard.
Okay, so he's doing something with his life, but you don't know what.
I don't know what.
Okay.
I saw him once, though.
Oh, did you?
Out of prison.
Where did you see him?
I was in Walmart, and
you ran into him in a Walmart.
He had just gotten out like a couple of months before, a few weeks before, and I just looked up, and there he was, 2 feet from me. And he just looked up, and there I was, and he reached out to hug me, and I stepped back, and he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Well," I remember saying, "Well, we're almost to the 10-year mark." So this has been 5 years ago. I said, "We're almost to the 10-year mark that I haven't found Angie yet. Are you going to tell me where Angie is?" And he said, "I told you where Angie was." And so I just kind of lost it, and I ran out of the store. And I handled it very bad. I wish I could do that again.
And you said he was with another woman when you ran into him.
Very pretty young woman. And she just kept walking by. I really truly believe she was just oblivious to the situation that was going on there. She was just on looking at whatever. I wish, it's one of those things that you think, if I could do that over again, I'd do it like this. I wish I'd ran her down and told her who she was with. Yeah. Whether she listened or not, at least I would have put a bug in her ear.
That's right.
But I didn't do that. I truly know that Angie died of domestic violence, and this could be happening to her now too.
Yeah.
But it's too late for that. But next time.
Early on we talked about the possibility of Michael having another woman at the time. of Angie's disappearance. Did anything ever come of that? Do you know who this woman might have been? Do you think that maybe she may know something about Angie's disappearance? You know anything about any of that?
I was to later find out. I didn't know it at the time. It took me a while to find out. But where he worked second shift, and it was in a nursing home, and he buffed floors at night. And this woman worked there too, and her name was Angie also.
Huh.
And I found out that, so he would, for quite a while, they would get off work and they would go what they called gravel roading. And so I assume that means just riding back around all the back roads and stuff. And I don't know whether they were smoking, drinking, or what they were doing. Yeah, and I don't know if when all the trouble started and Angie said he's going to leave me and I have to get a job, maybe she found out about this Angie. Or
do you know who this Angie? I would not, don't say her last name, but do you know who she is? This other Angie.
I do.
Have you ever
I've not
spoken
met
to her?
but
Never spoken to her.
I've never spoken to her, but
Okay.
I know her by her last name, and I know that she was married as well.
Okay. I normally don't do this. I usually don't put guests this much on the spot, but all these other cases that I cover are different. But I think I can do that in this case since we have a person who's confessed, even though we don't know how truthful the confession is. Do you believe Michael's story that Angie fell off the deck and hit her head on a rock? Do you believe that?
None whatsoever, no.
Okay. I have to ask, were there even any rocks for her head to hit in that bag?
It's so strange. It's the strangest thing because that land down there is quite rocky. It is very rocky. So when they bought their property that first summer, and she spent weeks picking up rocks, and under one of the trees, she had this big pile of rocks, which she had picked up everywhere out of the yard. Because for one thing, she needed a big garden tilled, and she had to get rid of those rocks. So the rocks in the yard, whatever rocks there were, Angie cleaned up. Whether there was a rock beside the deck, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me, however, because I don't believe it at all.
You don't believe that at all? Okay.
No.
And so you believe that Michael lied when he confessed and he got this deal?
Yes, I do believe he lied.
Okay. Do you have a website or a Facebook page set up for Angie and her disappearance, Marianne?
No, I mean, I have an Angie Yarnell Still Missing and Loved page.
Yeah, that's what I mean, sure.
But that page, is all about art and love and feel good stuff and Angie, anything Angie like.
Okay.
It's not a crime kind of a page or anything like that. It's just Love and Angie sort of page.
Okay, well, I'm going to link to it anyway, and I'm going to hope that the listeners check it out. By this time the listeners are hearing this, I will have posted it in the discussion group and on Unfound's page, and so they will know about it. Okay, so
that would be
there's
nice.
Okay, good, and I know that she is on Charlie Project, which is a very, very popular place and has a lot of good information. I think that a lot of the information there is accurate, and then of course she is on NamUs as well. I do have to ask you, of course, you've been talking about all the work that you've done. I know that the last 15 plus years have been horrible. How has Angie's older brother handled this in the last 15 years?
For first few years, he didn't want to talk about it, but he's always felt really bad that he didn't save her of course, we didn't know,
Yeah.
but that he should have somehow known and saved her from this. But now, as the years go by, we find ourselves sometimes laughing. Remember how Angie used to do this and that and stuff like that, So it's getting better, but it's been very hard for him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I in 2007 I co-founded Missouri Missing, and I like to, and we're very successful. And I like to think that Angie is a total inspiration for Missouri Missing.
Sure.
So I'm proud of that, and I'm pretty sure she's proud of that too. And it's the funniest thing. I just a couple of weeks after I knew she was missing, I wrote her a letter, because we always wrote letters and sent them in the mail. And I had a spiral notebook, and I just wrote a letter with where to mail it. But I thought eventually I'm going to know where to mail this. I just wanted her to know that I loved her and everything. And I just kept writing letters, and I kept writing letters. And before you know it, I started numbering and titling these notebooks. And I've written 25 notebooks of letters.
Oh, my. 25 notebooks.
Of letters to Angie.
Oh, my gosh.
And that when she went missing, it was almost Christmas. I'd already bought her gifts and everything. Then when she didn't come, I eventually took her presents and put them in the closet upstairs. And then when May came, which is her birthday, I went out and I bought a trunk. And so every Christmas and every birthday, I put another present in Angie's trunk.
Oh, my gosh.
Overflowing. And this Christmas, I opened my great-grandmother's trunk, and we started trunk 2 of Angie's trunk.
That is amazing.
So, I do those things,
Yeah.
Those sort of things makes me feel good. So
Yeah. That's a new story to Unfound. I've never heard of a parent doing that. That is a new one.
Mm-hmm.
That's very unique. Wow, what a
I
way
just feel
to
that
remember.
I just need to stay productive, and I like I said, I have Missouri Missing, and we stay really busy, and and I work with the Restorative Justice Program, and I went and spoke at a church last night, and things. It's just I feel it is my duty to go out there and honoring Angie, and
Of course.
not only Angie, but now, I know hundreds of families with missing loved ones.
Sure.
And we all need help, and that's how I get by,
Yeah, right. Any last words before we conclude this interview, Marianne?
Well, I don't know exactly, but I really appreciate you talking to me, and I appreciate all these people that are going to listen. And over the years, here and there, I hear different. I get a lot of support from people down there in Ivy Bend, and I did have billboards for Angie.
Mm-hmm.
The BBC seems to think that 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri movie was fashioned after Angie, and I kind of think that's true. But
Wow.
anyway, all the times I've went down there, some people have not been very nice to me, but others have just hugged me, and the business owners and all down there. My good friend down there, Pat, she lost a daughter named Angie as well. But it's so nice that Angie just lives on, and even if it's just curiosity thing or anything, it's all good to me. So I'm still hopeful that that we will find Angie one
Yeah.
of these days.
Right. And I hope I can assist in some way, Marianne. Just because you've been on the program doesn't mean that you and Angie aren't on my mind anymore. My guests will testify that even guests that I've had on the program 2 years ago, whenever, I keep in contact with them. If I ever need any help with anything. In fact, just today I was able to link up a former guest with a reporter who's going to be doing a story on this guest's brother who is missing. And, I talked to this woman like 2 years ago. But so, these are the things I like. If I can do it, I get it done. So that's what I'm always going to be here to do for you, if I can.
That is great. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay, Marianne, you're welcome. And I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you for having me on here.
You're welcome.
And that was my interview with Marianne Asher Chapman, mother of Michelle Angie Yarnell. I thank her for being on the program. I also need to thank a listener, Carrie, who drove down to the Ivy Bend area to take some video of where Angie lived. You can find the video at the Unfound YouTube channel. This is not your standard kind of summation that I usually do for an episode. No need to wonder who did it or why, and what's the reason the police aren't taking the case more seriously. Nope, we have the main suspect, Michael Yarnell. He admitted to being responsible for Angie's death and disappearance. He did his time, and he is now a free man, just like me and you. Well, maybe not. Michael Yarnell is not in the same situation as you or I am, unless you've ever had to allocute to a crime to get a reduced sentence. Michael ultimately decided he wanted to admit he was responsible for Angie's death and disappearance. Remember, that happened because the DA wanted to give him a deal if Michael revealed where Angie's body was. Michael didn't do that, but he still got the deal. Why did that happen? Not sure we will ever know. But it's disgusting the DA was so gullible. Once again, hook, line, and sinker. We must remember something, though. Coming up with some story to tell the DA isn't necessarily illegal, and it's not perjury. However, when Michael told the same story in court, he was surely under oath and was required to tell the truth as part of his plea deal. Meaning, if Marianne or someone else could prove that Michael lied in court, then his plea deal is null and void. Furthermore, depending on the evidence someone would have to prove that Michael lied, he could be tried again for Angie's death and disappearance without the issue of double jeopardy. I'll leave the rest of the analysis up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.